perfection in Leibniz and Hegel. And the idea is to present a problem in Leibniz. It's a problem that has been presented before. It's called the incompossibility problem. And to propose a solution from Hegel. There are a number of solutions that have been proposed, and this is one that I'm conceiving of from Hegel's argument about possibility and necessity in the science of logic. Leibniz claims that God has actualized the best of all possible worlds. This means that the world we live in is the most perfect of all worlds. This also means that God has chosen from an infinite variety of other worlds. The claim exposes a complex relationship between actuality and possibility. The world we live in is not the only possible world that could have been. God could have chosen a world that functions differently, with a different set of physical laws, a different trajectory of historical events, or a different cast of creatures. But God nevertheless chooses this world because, based on Leibniz's thesis, it is the most perfect of all worlds. By actualizing the best of all possible worlds, God excludes all iterations of all other worlds from existence, causing a relation of divergence to occur. However, by bringing this one actual world into existence, God also causes a relation of convergence to occur. Leibniz uncovers an unusual relation, compossibility, by claiming that everything in this actual world is an expression of God. One might think of the universe as an odd collection of independent objects, people, forces, colors, shapes, etc. But Leibniz proposes, with the relation of compossibility, that the universe is all of one piece, like an ocean. But this famous claim from Leibniz, that God has actualized the best of all possible worlds, also leads to a significant problem, what commentators have often referred to as the problem of incompossibility. Leibniz can be seen to anticipate one prima facie version of this problem through his responses to the question, if this is the best of all possible worlds, then why do other incompossible worlds seem to be better than this one? Why does this actual world contain so much pain and suffering, so many natural and man-made disasters, and why can we imagine other possible worlds that do not exhibit these problems? Leibniz responds with a strategy of simplest means for maximum ends. God has chosen the most perfect world, Leibniz writes. That is, the one which is at the same time the simplest in hypothesis and the richest in phenomena. Perfection is as much about simplicity at the starting point as it is about complex variety in the result. Although we might imagine other worlds that are more perfect than this one, only this actual world contains just the right harmony of simplest laws that produce the most abundant variations of determinate being. Natural disasters, immoral behavior, the suffering of life are all part of God's divine calculus to actualize the most perfect world. So this is one version of the incompossibility problem. But there's a second one, and the paper is really about the second one. There is, however, another significant version of the incompossibility problem, one which Leibniz cannot be seen to have fully anticipated. This version has to do with the connection between perfection and maximizing possibility. If this is the best of all possible worlds, then why would God have chosen to exclude most of the possibilities projected in God's mind? Why not include, as Deleuze articulates the problem in the logic of sense and the fold, all of the incompossible worlds as well? And Deleuze is really an important figure, I think, for this version of the incompossibility problem. I think it's really from his work in the fold and the logic of sense that this other version of the incompossibility problem arises. Whereas the first version of the question aims at whether one of the other possible worlds could replace this one as the most perfect world, the second version of the problem aims at whether it would be more perfect to include rather than exclude all of the other possible worlds as well. This leads to a more difficult problem for Leibniz, since it calls into question whether the primary principles of his philosophy are incompatible with each other. It would seem that the reason why God had excluded other possible worlds is for the sake of perfection, since this world is relatively more perfect than others, and since the inclusion of other worlds would dilute the perfection of the actual world with their respective imperfection. And yet, if perfection has to do with maximizing possibility in actuality, the impetus to exclude the possible from the actual stands in direct conflict with the principle of perfection, to maximize the most abundant variety of possibility in actuality. Okay? So the second version is the one I want to target in Hegel as well. But first I'm going to outline a few of the traditional responses to the incompossibility problem in the commentaries. Commentators of Leibniz have devised two primary solutions to the problem of incompossibility. Some commentators propose that the principle of non-contradiction is the main reason why behind why God excludes incompossible worlds from existence. This is often referred to as the logical interpretation. Although God projects, for example, an alternative world where Adam does not sin, it would be a matter of contradiction if the actual world were to include both Adam the sinner and Adam the non-sinner. Moreover, since the whole world in which Adam does not sin would come along with Adam the sinner, right? This is the logic of expression. The whole world comes along with. It would be incomprehensible to imagine how these worlds, as well as an infinite variety of others, could combine together. If what is possible must adhere to the principle of non-contradiction, what is impossible then is that which logically contradicts itself. The world in which Adam does not sin cannot be made compossible with a world in which Adam sins, much in the way that, logically, A cannot both be A and not A. Okay, so this is an interpretation of the origin of the division, what makes the compossible world different from all these incompossible worlds that divide. The other primary solution to the incompossibility problem comes by way of the lawful interpretation. Okay, so there's the logical and the lawful. Leibniz claims that when God brings the actual world into being, God brings with it not only an infinite series of compossible substances, but also a series of laws that help to form the world's consistency and determinateness. Commentators who appeal to the lawful interpretation propose that the physical laws of each world are what divide compossibility from incompossibility. One advantage of this interpretation is that if laws are the real source of the compossible-incompossible division, this frees God from the otherwise problematic limitation that God would not be able to actualize across contraries. For the lawful interpretation, there is nothing inherently inconsistent about a world that contains contrary iterations of the same individual substance. It is simply a matter of whether a given set of laws can harmonize the perfections of the world better than others. Laws are what limit compossibility and distinguish the compossible from the merely possible. They are the basic order of things. The interconnections of compossibility and the whole notion of a world as well would be inconceivable without the laws that govern these connections. The lawful interpretation also exhibits shortcomings, however. Mainly, it leaves a certain ambiguity at the origin of the division between the compossible and the incompossible. It is this ambiguity that any purported solution to the incompossibility problem was supposed to have explained. Listing an algorithm of laws instead of the principle of non-contradiction leaves the lawful interpretation vulnerable to the same kind of ambiguity that had presented us with the incompossibility problem in the first place. After all, if God's aim is to bring into actuality the maximum amount of possibility, then why would he not be able to envisage a series of laws that maximally include the possible in the actual, rather than a series of laws that overtly exclude much of what is possible? So now I'd like to turn to Hegel. Okay? I think Hegel in particular has a powerful way of describing the incompossibility problem in Leibniz, and an important solution to this problem as well. The version of the incompossibility problem that presents itself in Hegel's actuality chapter of the Science of Logic, has to do with recognizing that there are really two separate conceptions of possibility at work in Leibniz's claim that this is the best of all possible worlds. These two separate conceptions of possibility are possibility as alternatives and possibility as a degree of quantity. Okay, so really the rest of the paper is about this distinction. These two, we often refer to possibility in terms of alternatives. So the first one, possibility in terms of alternatives. When we say that it is possible for something to come about, implying that it is also possible for it not to come about. The traditionally analytic definition of possibility as the minimum condition for the validity of a proposition assumes that this conception of possibility as the upholding of alternatives. But the second conception of possibility as a degree of quantity is equally intuitive. We often refer to possibility as a degree of quantity when we say that there is more or less possibility in something. We say that certain decisions lead to more possibilities and that other decisions take possibilities away. Effective childhood education can lead to higher degrees of possibility, for example. Finding oneself in prison can take these possibilities away. So I just want to pause for a moment, and I'm going to write these on the board. Because really the rest of the talk is about them. So the two conceptions of possibility. As alternatives, okay? So this is the name I've used. Hegel, it's embedded in his argument in a way. But the idea is that, I'm going to say this is one. If A is possible, this means that there's an A, or there's the opposite of the A. Okay, in actuality. something is possible, then it can be. It also can not be, right? I mean, we use this all the time in our, when we talk about possibility. Yes, it's possible for something to be, but it's also possible for it not to be. The other conception, and I think this is equally intuitive, possibility as a degree of quantity. And the idea behind this conception is that there is more or less possibility in actuality. There's a quantity of possibility in actuality. Equally intuitive, we say, yes, if I do this, there are lots of possibilities from here. And this is really what Leibniz has in mind with perfection. It's a degree of quantity of possibility. This is the greatest degree. This is the most perfect world. Right? So it's actuality as more or less. Okay? By distinguishing between these two conceptions of possibility, Hegel thereby articulates the incompossibility problem in Leibniz. This articulation takes the following form. On the one side, Leibniz's claim that God actualizes the best of all possible worlds assumes a conception of possibility as alternatives. Right? The other worlds are excluded. God projects them in the mind. They're excluded in actuality. So it's an alternative. There are alternative worlds. God actualizes the best of all possible worlds by excluding the contrary nature of possibility from actuality. The world is best that excludes the possibility of other less perfect worlds. However, on the other side, Leibniz's claim assumes a conception of possibility as greatest quantity. To bring about the best of all possible worlds, God actualizes the greatest amount of possibility in